Hello, welcome to this week's Before the Weekend, your weekly update on things that I believe matter for society, the economy, leadership and life, and that I look at through the perspective of noble purpose. I have selected 3 topics and I find them important. The first one is mergers and acquisitions are only successful thanks to organizational culture. 2, China's economic dictatorship. And 3, the meaning we give to our life. I really hope you will enjoy this week's update. Let's go on. Mergers and acquisitions are only successful thanks to organizational culture, I believe. This week we had 2 French enterprises, Veolia, specialized in water purification, and Suez, specialized in waste disposal, having agreed after months of fighting and hostile bidding and defending on a 30 billion euro deal. Earlier this year we had a very fluid integration of the FCA group, the Fiat Chrysler, Italian-American car maker, and French PSA group with brands such as Peugeot and Citroën and Vauxhall, Opel, DS, to come to Stellantis. Now, what I do know and do see very often in mergers and acquisitions is that very often the main driver is coming from a financial growth or a financial cost-saving perspective, or from an operational, logistic, R&D sharing perspective, or from a sales and market share growth perspective. Nothing wrong with that. What do often happen is that organizations stumble along the road with their new organization because of the organizational culture not being at the level of the ambition that they have set for their what we call quantitative parameters or financial parameters. So it's very important that while focusing very often, I would say even too often, on financial parameters, organizational culture gets the same importance, if not even more focus, in a merger and acquisition. And if you think that organizational culture is something fluffy and not really relevant in mergers and acquisitions, let me give you some examples. We have seen some very dramatic failures in mergers and acquisitions, with Sony and Columbia Pictures going totally wrong, Daimler-Benz and Chrysler, we have had AOL and Time Warner, we have had Volvo and Renault, we have had Fortis and ABN AMRO that tried to do something and then it actually succeeded. They have been amongst the most expensive failures in M&As. We have some ongoing operations like Air France KLM. We also have Bank of America and Merrill Lynch. And we had some years ago also the attack, so to say, of LVMH on Hermes, which then finally didn't happen. So I have in the knowledge of the importance of organizational cultures very often not seen or considered as something really essential. I have 2 recommendations for entrepreneurs, investors and CEOs who are considering of doing an M&A. First, be conscious of the importance of organizational culture of the new organization to make the financial ambition succeed. After all, culture eats strategy for breakfast over and over again. And the second thing is, make the integration of the existing culture or the existing cultures into one new organizational culture with new values, new beliefs, a new noble purpose, so that employees can engage to fully contribute to the post-integration plans, and that is actually where the success will sit. That is obviously where very often leaders are looking for synergies. Jack Ma's Ant Group, a financial platform, was set to make history last November as the world's largest IPO. But the Chinese regulators pulled the plug just a few days prior. Alibaba, the distribution platform of Ma, very successful, was imposed last week to pay an 18 billion renminbi fine because of so-called being too dominant in the Chinese market. What is happening? Jack Ma, long time being praised as China's exemplary national entrepreneurial hero, is now being mulched for having lashed out at the Chinese regulatory authorities, whom he accused of lacking innovation. China's President Xi Jinping was furious at Ma's comment because he's seeing the financial oversight as his signature reform. And the speech then became the final trigger to led to the abrupt halt of Ant's public listing. Now, the Ant Group incident reveals really the fragile future of innovation in China, and the increasing government control coupled with bureaucratic infighting decreases, I believe, the incentives for entrepreneurs and private investors to take initiatives. We have had similar cases in other countries with other governments who have decapitated entrepreneurs, not literally, but in the way of speaking, because they were afraid of losing control over these entrepreneurs or let them gain too much impact in society. We have in Russia, for example, the case with Mikhail Khodorkovsky and Yukos Oil in 2003, where he gave some critics to President Putin and the alleged corruption and the way how things were going, led by the government and the party, and Putin has been taking down both the entrepreneur and the enterprise. So what is the point I want to make? No progress without entrepreneurship, no progress without a tolerant and corrupt-free government. Therefore, it's very important, I believe, that free entrepreneurship and the right degree of government control should go hand in hand to shape nations' economic innovation, growth and stability. I do believe that entrepreneurs and governments have the obligation to work together at the service of society. And in my philosophy, I really want entrepreneurs and governments to join forces to realize the noble purposes that respectively the enterprises and the government have defined for themselves. I do believe that it is through challenging and supporting each other while putting themselves at service for society that entrepreneurs and governments will be truly relevant and able to concretely contribute to progress, innovation, freedom, and so much needed democracy. This week I had an intriguing conversation with an executive client of ours who said being frustrated for having worked most of the days during his Easter week off. And when I asked him why he felt frustrated, he said that he had nothing else to do than work. Having nothing else to do than work, isn't that a sad thing to come to realize, that we keep ourselves busy with working as there is nothing else or nothing better to do? Especially when very often that work is not necessarily fulfilling. The sad thing is that I often encounter people that have nothing better to do than just work. And at the same time, they're not necessarily satisfied with the work they do. So they're kind of like trapped in that proverbial golden cage. They keep going in a system that they don't like. They keep doing things that they don't necessarily like, or the way how they do it is not necessarily how they like it. And yet they get stuck. And it made me think of the London-based chairwoman that I spoke to a couple of years ago when I was introduced to her to have a meaningful conversation. She was missing some sparkle in her life, she said. Although she was very successful, had an important amount of assets, had a great relationship, had a lovely family, was in good health. And she didn't really understand why there was something kind of like deeper missing. So I gave her a week and I said, let's reconnect next week and you tell me why you get up in the morning. So we speak after a week and she told me that she had found it, why she would wake up in the morning, and she said to earn a living. Says the successful multi-million pound earning businesswoman leading a holding with several organizations in that holding, employing tens of thousands of people. So much for inspirational leadership. So I do believe that we as free human beings, we owe it to ourselves to take the time to connect with ourselves and understand why we really are here. And maybe this weekend can be an invitation for you to also reflect, should you not have done that. In my book, The Book of Noble Purpose, I explain why it is so important, in my perspective, for every human being to create that self-awareness, ask that why question in order to be able to lead joyful, fulfilling and complete lives. I do believe that it is only through fulfillment in what we do, by being connected with why we do it, that we really will energize ourselves, that we will boost our potential, that we will come together as complete human beings, and that we will have lives that are meaningful at all moments. And it will definitely also allow us to take holidays and be able to do things that are different than just working to keep ourselves busy. That was it for this week's Before the Weekend. I hope you find it interesting. Like the video if you did, and share it with those that you think would also find it interesting. Do subscribe to the weekly Before the Weekend updates in my YouTube channel. I hope to see you again next week, and for now, enjoy the weekend.